This year has been a journey for all of us. Everybody has their story from this past year, I'm sure, as we do. Gary already mentioned that the last year started in January out with a bang for us, literally a bang, because we blew the engine up in our bus. And, I don't know if this is just God's sense of humor. Maybe it is. But the engine blew up in the town of Scott, Louisiana. Of all places. So when the police come to check on you on the side of the highway, it says Scott on the side of their squad cars. And when the fire department drove by, it said Scott Fire Department. And when I was calling all the mechanics, it was, Scott Repair Services. And just thought that was a little, tow truck even said Scott on the side of it. And maybe it was a sign. But 730,000 miles was just too much for that engine. So it was time to put a new one in. So we ended up doing that. It was a much longer story that took about 3 months, but my wife and I changed the engine in that bus twice and finally got it running and working. The first engine that went in there was built incorrectly, and we had to take it back out and have it rebuilt, and then we had to put it back in. But that whole story, we ended up limping the bus to Florida and parked it at a friend's pole barn there. That's where we were fixing it. I had to drive up to Pennsylvania and sing for an evangelistic series. Then the pandemic hit, so the evangelistic series was stopped halfway through. So we drove back down to Florida and tried to continue working on the bus. Had to take our engine to Pennsylvania to be rebuilt by the only company that really does these rebuilds, take it back down to Florida and put it in. So it was quite the start to the year. Then when the pandemic was in the full swing, Heather and I, of course, realized this wasn't just going to be something that lasted a few weeks. I think we all thought that originally. We, in about a 3 or 4 week time period, lost 160 events that we had booked for the year. Some of you, of course, know that the General Conference session was going to happen in Indianapolis. It Is Written had scheduled a huge evangelistic thrust just before the GC session. So I was going to sing for GC. I was supposed to be singing for this It Is Written evangelistic meeting. It was a 4-series meeting. So Pastor John was going to preach at a series in the northern part of Indianapolis. Pastor Robert Costa, who's with Escrito Está, which is the Spanish It Is Written, was going to preach in the southern part of the Latino area of Indianapolis. Yves Manier, evangelism director, was going to speak in the eastern part. Eric Flickinger was going to speak in the western part. We had this city completely covered, and I was going to be traveling around all of them every night just singing. It was really wild. I was looking forward to it. Of course, that event was, the plug was pulled on that. Plug was pulled on General Conference session. The plug was pulled on the 5 camp meetings I was scheduled to sing at, including one in Canada, because when the borders closed, of course, we lost that event. So life changed for everybody. I remember talking to Pastor John Bradshaw, and I was like, so what does life look like? You guys had this event planned. You're not going to do it. What are you going to do? He's like, you know what? Everything's been canceled, but he says evangelism can't be canceled. And I remember him saying that. Evangelism isn't canceled. So we're going to find a way. God has a plan in all this. So they ended up going virtual with the evangelistic series. I was able to go down to the studio and record in the studio for them to play virtually. It was a cool experience. When this Hope Awakens series went virtual, it went nationwide. So instead of just being in Indianapolis, now you've got the whole country playing this series of meetings that he is every night filming live in the studio. Now the cool thing about that is they had spent all this money on Facebook marketing, so people were watching this at home during the pandemic. And as a result, as of today, the latest numbers are, as a result, 3,500 people around the country, United States alone, have been baptized as a result of this series. And we know that because we keep track of all the metrics. So the pastors of the local churches that we're sending these people to, who are saying, hey, I want to learn more after watching the series, are reporting back to It Is Written and saying, hey, as a result of that series, we just baptized somebody, we just baptized another person, we just baptized somebody. And so the numbers right now, like I said, are 3,500 people who, before a pandemic, didn't know who Jesus was, or maybe did but didn't, and now do. So God can take something like that and make a really amazing experience out of it. So that's a blessing. It Is Written is also doing this program called Take Charge of Your Health. So right now, people are thinking about their health a lot. It is at the forefront of their minds. We have been told over and over again that there are comorbidities when it comes to any kind of sickness. Really, it's true. Any kind of major infection, there's a lot of other complications you can have with your health that make it worse. And so people are hopefully making an effort to be a little healthier than they normally would be. And so It Is Written started this program, Take Charge of Your Health. They're interviewing physicians and doctors and nurses and all kinds of different health practitioners from all walks of life. Very fascinating. Watch the one on cognitive decline. It's a 2-part series. Really, really cool to watch. If you have a loved one who is experiencing cognitive decline, you need to watch. These are powerful. I'm going to show you a snippet of one and see if you can guess what disease he's specifically talking about here. 1 in 10 Americans suffer from.
Tonight, we're going to talk specifically about a disease that affects 1 in 10 Americans. And while more than 34 million...
Anybody want to guess what that is? 1 in 10. It is diabetes, yeah. It's diabetes. It's hard to believe that, but 1 in 10 people. That is considered a comorbidity to a lot of things. So it's just powerful. If you have someone, a family member, friend, that is seriously taking charge of their health, have them watch this series. Go to YouTube. Go to It Is Written, Take Charge of Your Health. That's all it is. There's a whole series. They're professionally done. And this is what It Is Written was doing during the pandemic, was filming these like crazy. John said, I love the fact that I'm not traveling around the world because I get to spend time with my kids who are about to go to college and I won't get to see them anymore. So he says, I'm grateful for that gift and that blessing. But he also has stayed very busy in It Is Written's brand new studio. Now, this is what's crazy is It Is Written just last year, just before the pandemic, had moved into their new building, where they had their own studio and everything. It had been taken years to build. And if they did not have this building, they would not have been able to do all these events online in virtuality because they didn't own a studio. So God knew the timing was perfect. They were able to move in, pandemic hit, and they were able to film all their programming that they filmed. So evangelism isn't canceled even when everything else is. I want to start this morning by singing a song that I believe represents the start of our journey. And that's what I'm going to talk about this morning. It's a sermon title is The Journey. We are all on one. This last year was just one chapter. It was one very long, very difficult chapter. It's still not quite over. But we are all going somewhere. As Seventh-day Adventist Christians, we're not just another denomination. We are a movement of people. And we are headed to the promised land. Now, when Abraham was called on his journey, he really didn't know exactly what the destination was. He just followed God. All along the way, his faith was tested and strengthened. When Joseph started his journey, really it started in an old pit. And it ended up in someone's house as a slave. And just when things couldn't really get worse, he ends up in jail, accused of something he didn't do. What a journey. Sometimes God takes us on journeys. He tells us what the destination is going to be. Sometimes he doesn't. But we're all on one. And it starts with that moment that we are first introduced to him, whether we're children and our parents introduced us to Jesus, whether it was our pastor, whether it was a friend, whether it was a series of meetings or a video. We all have our come to Jesus moment. That's what this song celebrates. It's a little snippet of our journey with Jesus. So whether you're a baby Christian, holding on to the pinkies of God, learning to walk in your faith for the first time, or maybe you are a mature Christian, you have walked with God your entire life and you're the person that we look up to. You're my mentor. Maybe you have days when you have a mountaintop experience and you see God do something amazing in your life. You know it was him. And you want to dance for joy like David danced. Or maybe there are moments when you just want to cry. And your Heavenly Father says, come and cry on my shoulder. I will hold you until the pain subsides. Wherever you are in that journey, this song is for you. One of my come to Jesus moments was sometime probably around the age of 10, I want to say. I was attending the Metropolitan SDA Church there on Haggerty Road down in Detroit in the suburbs. I was attending the school as well. The pastor's son was one of my really best friends. We were very close, and both of us were the same age, and we started to kind of have a spiritual awakening around the same time. Comes a point in time, and it's a little bit different for everyone, when the relationship that you have with Christ becomes a little bit more personal and a little less through your parents. Now, my girls are 3 and 5, and everything they know about Jesus, they know through mom and dad. They look to him through us. We're his representative to them. But there comes a time in a child's life when that connection becomes very direct between them. And some kids have it pretty young, actually. For me, it was 10. And I remember all the stories that the pastor had been preaching about for years, all the stories I had been reading about in Guideposts magazine, all of the stories that my parents were telling me, all the mission books, even these cool little Reader's Digest stories that mom would read to me, all the stuff about miracles and God and Jesus, it all started to click. Hey, these are not just stories. This stuff really happened. There really is a God. He really did create me. He really did make a bad choice, and he really did make it right. And he died for me. And he's coming back for me. And when it all started to click, I realized whatever team Jesus is on, that's my team. There comes a time in our lives when we draw a line and we say, I'm going to stand over here on this side. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. So Ryan, my friend, and I studied together, did these baptismal classes for several months with Pastor Frank Haynes. And the day came when he said, do you feel like you're ready to be baptized? And there was no question in my mind. I said, I know I'm ready. I knew. I had my come to Jesus moment. And then the day came, and Ryan and I were baptized together. It was a cool day. I'll never forget it. It was a big deal. You die to your old self, you come up a new person. I remember how I felt coming out of that water, thinking, man, this is really great to know that I'm standing under the banner of Jesus. I'm on his side. It's official. Team Jesus. I think baptism is so important. It's part of the journey. You know, this is going to sound like a terrible pun, but I think we water down the importance of baptism a little bit today. It's a big deal. I'm going to give you 3 reasons why I believe that baptism is extremely important in the journey. Number 1, you are taking a thought process that is abstract, kind of ambiguous, and you are turning it into a concrete action. Now, scientists and psychologists who study this kind of thing will tell you that anytime you take a thought and you put it into an action, it actually has more of an effect on you. And this is proven if you have ever gone to, and I've never done this, but if you've ever go to a seminar on memorization. They have these all the time for corporate events. You have a guy who maybe closes $2 million deals in the corporate world. It's very important that he remembers the names of the people, the business clients that he's meeting. It can be the difference between a client choosing his firm or choosing another firm. Man, this guy called me, but he knows my name. I feel like we're friends. We're going to give him the contract. That's $2 million. It's a big deal. Forgetting someone's name can cost you a lot of money. So these guys go to these seminars and they learn how to memorize people's names. The first time they meet them, like the very moment, hey, my name's Jim. Okay. 5 months later, when Jim calls and says, hey, I want to have a contract. Hey, Jim, is this Jim? Yeah. You remember me? Yeah, I remember you. How they do it, one of the ways, they give you a lot of tools, but one of the ways is they say when you meet somebody for the first time, the moment you're out of their presence, you keep repeating their name in your head, but you take out a piece of paper, you write down their name, Jim. You can throw the paper away, but just by going and writing down the name, turning that thought into an action, you will actually have a 50% greater chance of remembering Jim's name. One tool in the arsenal of memorization. This is proven over and over and over again in other aspects of life. So when you decide, I want to be a Christian, you've decided it in your head and in your heart. When you decide to be baptized, you decided it in action form. You're physically going down to your old self and you're coming up going, I'm a new person now. I'm a new person. So that's one reason it's really important to get baptized and not just say, I'm a Christian, I'm just going to profess it. You got to do something. Now, the second reason I think it's important is because when you are baptized, you generally invite your family and your friends, the people that you love, the people that love you, that are going to support you through your journey, and they come and they watch you take that step. And now, in the future, they're going to hold you accountable for it. And accountability is powerful. So when you come to a fork in the road of your journey and you go, I don't know if to go this way or this way, those people that you love are going to say, you know, you're a Christian now. There was a time in your life you would have made that decision with the flip of a coin, but now you're a Christian. So you need to ask yourself, what would Jesus do? Which path would Jesus want you to take? And your friends and your family will hold you accountable for the decision that you made. That's the importance of baptism. The third reason I think baptism is important is because it gives heaven a reason to have a party. And with everything that heaven has to witness today on the earth on a daily basis, why would we rob heaven of a joyful celebration when someone gives their life to Jesus in the waters of baptism? I'm saying this because there are people today, millions of them, who aren't going to get another chance after this past year. They don't get another chance. I know some of them. So if God has sent the Holy Spirit to impress your heart to be baptized, I think I should. The Holy Spirit isn't impressing your heart so that you can get baptized 2 years from now. He's impressing your heart because he wants you to make that decision now, and there's a reason. The Holy Spirit is saying, I want you to remember this decision. I want you to remember whose child you are. And I want your friends and family to see this decision you've made, because you've got decisions coming up in your life soon, and they're going to need to hold you accountable. So if God is impressing your heart, I should really be baptized. I know Jesus. I know what he's done for me, and I want to make a public statement for him. This is your year. This is your year. Do it now. Choose to get baptized. Let the church celebrate. Let heaven celebrate. And start your journey. I'm going to sing a song about baptism that I love. And you might have heard it before, maybe you haven't. It's called Been Through the Water. And it's just a very simple song with a very simple story. And the story goes like this. Basically, you've got a young man who's decided to get baptized, and his family and friends in the church have showed up along the riverbank so they can watch him in this new step in his journey. And his dad thought, I really want to give my son something special to, celebrate his baptism. And he wanted to do something that was a little more deep, a little more meaningful. So he buys him a whole new outfit to wear, a whole new suit of clothes. And he said, son, when you come up, you're going to come up clean. You're going to come up a new young man. And so I'm just going to give you a new suit of clothes to wear. I thought that was a really, really good plan. I think that's genius. Dad doesn't think to get his son shoes as part of the outfit. He just gets him clothes. And the son takes this whole symbolic gesture and he runs with it, literally. He walks home barefoot all the way. And he gets there and everybody's getting dinner ready and they're all laughing at him going, what are you doing? You just got baptized. Your feet are filthy. He says, I've been through the water and I've come out clean. And I have new clothes to cover me. But you don't wear your old shoes on your brand new feet when you've been through the water. This is your year. If God is calling you, heed the call. I'm looking forward to the day when my daughters make their decision. I pray they do. I can tell you, almost never does a night go by that I don't look at my girls sleeping in their beds and just say, God, save my kids. No matter how hard my wife and I are going to try, there's only so much we can do in today's world to keep them safe from Satan. Save our kids. I beg God. I don't care what they do in life, what their occupation is. I don't care who they marry. I do care who they marry, but I try to act like I don't. Just save my kids, and I can have eternity making memories with them. A couple years ago, when I was singing for Pastor John's meetings in Phoenix, this was just before we drove from Phoenix to Florida and the bus blew up in Scott, Louisiana. I was singing for his meetings. Our bus was parked in Scottsdale. Meetings were in the Phoenix Convention Center, downtown Phoenix. If you know Phoenix, I've lived there. I grew up part of my life there. Phoenix is kind of rough. They call it Little LA because of its traffic. So evening meetings, they're being filmed, they're televised. There's, of course, a makeup crew. There's a lot going on when you do a series of meetings at that level. And so I had to leave the bus pretty early in the day to get down there and get all of that done, get sound check, everything done before the meeting started in the evening. And so even though the meeting didn't start till 7, sometimes I would leave 3:30 in the afternoon to get down there, get through traffic, and get ready. At the time, Aubrey, I think, was 1. Emma was 3. Aubrey couldn't care less whether dad was around or not. She just was kind of clueless about what was going on around her. Emma, she did care. And as I was leaving every night, a couple weeks into this, she started to kind of have meltdowns. She knew every night Daddy was going to go. Daddy was the one who was supposed to sit there with Mom and rock her to sleep or sing to her. Heather would always sing, "Jesus Loves Me," and I would join her. And so Daddy wasn't there to eat dinner with her. Daddy wasn't there to put her to sleep or tuck her in. And she started to stand at the windshield of the bus and have meltdowns as I was driving away, and it was killing me. So Heather had this great idea. She said, "Honey, why don't you just take her with you? You know, she's getting to the age where she's starting to actually, listen and can sit quietly for periods of time." And I've talked to her about it, and she said she's willing to do it. So I told Emma, I said, "Honey, this is going to be a long time of sitting quietly, but I would love to bring you. Daddy-daughter date, Daddy bring your daughter to work night, whatever you want to call it, let's do it." So the day came, Heather got her all prettied up. She had her hair all done nice. She had a little bit of perfume on. She packed her little sack supper. She was super excited. She's in the car seat, chitter-chattering about this all the way to downtown Phoenix. That's like an hour-and-a-half trip. So the advantage of taking my daughter with me, I didn't even think about this, was I can use the HOV, high occupancy vehicle lane now, because I've got 2 or more people in my car. So I'm just like sailing past all these people, waving as I go by, thinking, man, I'm taking my daughter to work every night from now on. So we get there. I had a little chair for her backstage. And tiny little Emma, there's this huge camera truck just a few feet away from her, parked inside the convention center with all the billions of cables going to it. And all the staff are running around like crazy. It's total chaos. And there's my just little peaceful flower just sitting there eating her little sack supper while Daddy does sound check. There was a big flat screen monitor facing back behind the stage so she could see what was going on the other side of the curtain. And I said, "Listen, you got to sit here quietly. Daddy's going to sing. I'm going to come back. I'm going to sing. I'm going to come back. It's going to kind of be like that. I'll be with you when I'm not on stage, but when I'm on stage, you've got to sit here and you've got to be quiet." And so over the course of the next several days into the next couple of weeks of the meetings, she did so good. She came with me several times. And the camera crew and all the staff with It Is Written just kind of fell in love with her. And she started coming home with armloads of gifts from everybody. They just spoiled her back there. The night came from the baptisms, and the baptisms were awesome. It's always my favorite time. It is. I get to sing and play the piano just a few feet away from the baptismal tank, and I get to see people's lives being changed forever. This isn't just a temporary change. This is not just between now and retirement or now and then when I die. This is forever. Forever, ever, ever change is happening right there a few feet away from me. And I'm playing the piano and singing. Gets me every time. I've sung for tons of them. Still has the same effect on me, seeing people make a decision for Jesus. And Emma's watching that night. Heather and Emma and Aubrey, we always make sure the final night of a series that I'm singing for, everybody comes. We know it's going to be a late night. The kids are not going to go to bed till 10 o'clock, but they're there to watch the baptisms. My kids have seen a lot of people get baptized. It's one of their favorite things. I'll never forget Emma just telling me that night. She said, "That was my favorite part of the whole meetings is people getting baptized. I loved watching it." I'm like, "Good for you." So they pretend to baptize each other, the girls, all the time in the bus. Fast forward a few years, obviously, and here we are. And one day, Emma, just a couple months ago, says, "Hey, Dad." And I said, "What, honey?" And I think I was on my phone or something. "Hey, Dad." I said, "What?" And she grabs my face. "No, Dad." She really wanted me to focus. And I said, "What?" She said, "Dad, I want to go on another daddy-daughter date again, like we did a long time ago." And I said, "Emma, I would love to do that. You know, we're way overdue. Let's do it. You choose what we do, and we'll do it." She said, "How about we just go see people get baptized?" Honest to goodness, that's what she said to me. I cannot wait till they make that decision. And I beg God that they will. But one of the things I'm trying to teach my girls, and Heather and I both are doing this together as their parents, is the power and importance of grace. And the reason is because when you make a decision in your journey, you have met Jesus, you have made a public statement and stand for him, and now Satan doubles down. Okay? Now you have officially aligned yourself with the army of God. Now you are my sworn enemy. And so Satan is going to start putting stumbling blocks all along that path on that journey, hoping we trip over every single one of them, and hoping really that one of those times when we fall, we don't get up again. That's where grace comes in, and God says, you fell, made a mistake, you're sorry. Guess what? That's why I died. I didn't die in vain. You get up again, and I'm going to help you, and we're going to do this my way. There's a song that says we fall down and we get up. We fall down, we get up. The saints are just the sinners who fall down and get up. Grace abounds so that we can get back up. Satan will whisper, there's no point in getting back up. I got another obstacle just a few inches away. You're going to trip over that one too. Are you tired yet? Give it up. And God says, no, get up. So I'm trying to teach my girls the power of grace. It is powerful. Oh, we can teach them about how daddy gets pulled over occasionally by the police, and sometimes the police don't give daddy a ticket, and that's grace. I deserved it. I deserved the consequence for my mistake. But someone said, you know what, you're clearly sorry. I'm going to give you grace. Sometimes with my daughters, we're able to show them grace in a more real, meaningful way. When they make a mistake and they know what the consequences were for that error in judgment, they know. And I can sometimes look into my daughter's face, and Heather and I can look at each other, and we just know. You know your kids. You know when their hearts are really contrite, when they're really sorry. You just know. And you can look into their face and you can say, there's no punishment that's going to make her feel worse about what she did than what she's feeling right now. And as parents, we can say, we are extending grace to you and mercy, just like, and I just told Emma this just the other day. I said, Emma, I'm giving you mercy because Jesus gave it to me. And I know what it feels like to be forgiven when I made a mistake. And so you're sorry, and I know you are. I don't want you to ever do that ever again. Here's grace and mercy. Now, do we always show our kids grace and mercy over everything? You can't, because like Buddy Hoteling wrote in his song, if mercy is all we ever show, there's half of God they'll never know. So when they took a little grill scrubby, those scrubbies that look like Brillo pads, sandpapery things to scrub your grill, they're probably like 10 grit, and took it to the paint on our bus door. There was no mercy there. When we get back home, they're going to be taking polishing compound and they're going to polish it out. There are times they have to learn that there are consequences, and God does that with us. There are times he says the consequence is part of the learning process. It's part of the growth. It's part of teaching you, I don't want to do that again. But I am thankful for his grace. When I deserved death, he gave me life. When I deserved no place in heaven, he gave me one, and he's building a mansion for me there. When I never deserved mercy, he granted it to me. And that's what this song celebrates. I know you guys know this song, and I think you'll be blessed by it if you have ever felt the amazing, unexplainable grace of God. I am thankful that I can forgive much because I have been forgiven much myself. In our journey, there are stops along the way that are beautiful. There are times when we take a moment and we see God's plan unfolding before us, and we're in awe. Gary and I were just talking about this, how maybe it's a house or a school or a job, something that God has orchestrated on your behalf. And you just take a moment to smell the roses, to watch the sunrise, and say, God, thank you for what you do for me. There are also stops along the way that take your breath away in another way because they hurt so much. Stops along the way that might be lonely. You know, you're on this journey and there are moments you're crowded, you're surrounded by people, you have people with you, you're talking, you're holding hands along the way, and then there are moments where you're just by yourself, or maybe you think you are. It can be scary moments in the journey. My dad is going through that. In addition, last year to interesting drama here with our bus and the pandemic, as the year kind of waned on, I was in Pennsylvania. Of course, we were stranded there, having our bus engine rebuilt, waiting for this evangelistic meeting series to restart, which it never did. And so I ended up getting a couple of construction jobs that summer, building some commercial buildings, and it was just a weird time for us. And then I got a phone call in September from my aunt, who was kind of taking care of my grandmother, who was living in Florida. She said, "Scott, Nanny's dying." And I said, "Oh, you know, when you're 96, you've earned the right to rest." Okay, I'm going to disclaimer that. You have. But I knew that if Nanny was dying, I wouldn't be able to go to see her. In fact, I didn't get to see her. We were in Florida visiting the family, and we stood out in the driveway, and they stood at the door, and my nanny was in bed, and I just had to basically glimpse her through the glass. And then I hear that she's dying, and I just thought, I'm not going to get to really talk to her again. I'm not going to get the closure of a funeral. I was like, "Auntie, it breaks my heart. Keep me in touch." And she did, and shortly afterwards, in September, my grandmother passed away. That woman had stories. You know, my family all emigrated from India to British Guyana back in the day when Guyana was divided directly down the middle, and it was French Guyana and British Guyana. And the British, were controlling. They were controlling India, and so if you were Indian, you kind of had British nationality, citizenship, and so a lot of people came to Guyana. They were indentured servants there, working in the cane fields for many years. But then when slavery, indentured servanthood kind of was just completely banned in England, it extended eventually to British Guyana. And so then at that time, a lot of Indians moved from Guyana to London. And so a lot of my family to this day is still in London. A lot of my family came from London to the United States and Canada and Germany. My grandmother was one of the ones that came to the States and is living here. So she has amazing stories. She never learned to drive, never got a driver's license. She's old school like that. She would either walk or take the bus every day to the little Caribbean market where she got her Indian food and could make curry and everything that she made. It was awesome. She was so old school. She's a matriarch in the family. She was Muslim. My whole family's Muslim. She's what we call a Hajjan, kind of it's a respected term for a spiritual mentor and matriarch. We call them pillars of the faith in our church. That's who she was. And so when I brought Heather to my grandmother to meet her, I was doing a tour in Florida at that time. Our bus was parked 15 minutes from Nanny's house, so we were able to go there 3 or 4 days a week, take her shopping so she didn't have to take the bus. And then she would teach my wife to make curry and roti and all these Indian dishes. So my wife to this day can cook, and you would never ever be able to tell the difference between my family's cooking and her cooking. It's amazing. I have video of it, of them laughing and having a blast in the kitchen together. That was my nanny. You know, when my parents were going through a rough time in their life, there's a divorce and a remarriage, I was living with my nanny during part of that time, a very brief time, but I was living with her. And I used to tell her, "Nanny, do you remember when I lived with you? I have such good memories of that." I was 7 years old. She's like, "No, I don't." She says, she only had one bed. She says, "You used to kick me all night. Kick, kick, kick. I never slept the whole time you were staying with me." Thanks, Nanny. Trying to have a moment here. You feel it when you lose someone like that. You do. And when you don't have the closure of a funeral, your mind plays these weird tricks on you. I used to think closure was kind of a foo-foo psychological babble thing. It's not. It's real. You've got to have some sort of, again, you've got a thought process. My grandmother's passed away, but it's not put into action yet. So my heart doesn't always realize what's going on. And so I remember thinking to myself, "Oh, we're going to go to Florida. I'll get to see Nanny." No, I won't. So I called my aunt up and I said, "Auntie, I know you're going to sell Grandma's house. Before you do, I just want to make a trip down there. I need to walk through the house. I know that sounds weird." She said, "It doesn't sound weird at all. You do that." And so we drove down there to Florida. My wife and kids were so accommodating. And I was able to walk through my grandmother's house. It was empty. It was emptied of everything. Her bedroom was empty. Of course, the couch where we sat and chatted was empty. And I just had this moment where I realized, okay, Nanny, you're resting. I'm not going to see you again this side of heaven. And I had my closure. Shortly after that, very shortly after that, Heather and I got a phone call that her grandmother in Michigan had fallen, sustained a mortal injury in that fall and was dying. Heather spent her last 3 days of her life with her. It was really beautiful that she had that time, was able to talk to her. Heather's grandmother, Dorothy Cleaves, she was known in Port Huron as the Christmas Village Lady. Because every Christmas, she would set up this huge ceramic village with tiny little people on tiny little ice skates with tiny trees and fake snow. And it would take up the entire living room of her house. And she would let the public just come in and tour and see the magical Christmas village that was there. And the kids loved it, and the adults loved it. Everybody loved it. It was a thing. She made it into the newspaper. That was Dorothy Cleaves. Of course, her loss is felt. Once again, we don't get closure. And then 3 days before Christmas, my dad called me and he said to me, hey, Scott, Mama, who is my stepmom, who has been my stepmom for 32 years, he said, she's dying. And I said, Dad, I just talked to Mama on the phone. Heather and I just talked to her literally like 4 days earlier. What do you mean? What happened? You know, these are all the questions you ask. And he's unfolding the story. They had held hands and had devotions and prayed like they always do that night in bed. They'd gone to sleep. He woke up in the morning, she didn't. He could hear her breathing and snoring, and he thought, oh, she's just sleeping in. 9:30, 10:30, 11 o'clock, noon. She still hasn't woken up. Tried to wake her up, he couldn't. Called the paramedics. They said she had had a stroke in the middle of the night. I can tell you right now that if she had had a choice of how to go, that's how she wanted to go. God gives us the desires of our hearts, sometimes even to the end. But my dad, Heather's grandfather, they are feeling the true sense of loneliness. That's where they are in their journey. They're marching along, putting one foot in front of the other, because you don't move on, you just move forward when you lose somebody. But they're lonely. My dad tells me that all the time. I talk to him on the phone sometimes 4 hours at a time. Dad, how you doing? There are days he sounds amazing. I'm thinking he's going to a grief share group at the church. He's doing all the right things every week. He hasn't made any really drastic decisions immediately following Mama's passing. And I just think he's doing fine. And then the other days I talked to him and I thought, man, he's not going to survive another day. He's going to die of a broken heart. My poor dad. He's so lonely. He says to me, I'm so lonely. I said, Dad, you know you're not really alone. He's like, I know. He says, in fact, my spiritual connection with Jesus is greater than it's ever been in my life. He says, I really mean that, because I'm clinging to him out of desperation now. He's all I have. No distractions, nothing to say. I've seen him work in my life. He said, I'm reading these books. I'm reading the Bible. I'm reading The Desire of Ages. It's so wonderful. He says, that's the one bright thing in this whole mess, is that Jesus and I are like this now. And I said, so Dad, you know you're not alone. He's like, I know, but I still feel alone, because I'll read the newspaper and then I'll turn back to Mama to say something to her about what I just read, and she's not there. I'm lonely. I feel so bad for my dad. It's a season in life that he's going through in his journey. That's why I'm about to sing this song. I know my dad is not the only one. Heather's grandfather, not the only ones who are lonely. I know. This past year has taught a lot of people what loneliness feels like. If that is a stage in the journey that you're on right now, or have recently been on, or maybe about to go through, this song is for you. It's a reminder that, yes, your head knows that God has promised that he is here. Your head knows that. My dad knows it. But your heart doesn't always get the memo. There's a natural disconnect sometimes between our head and our heart. And it's a very real struggle. Jesus himself went through that struggle when he's in the Garden of Gethsemane and he's sweating droplets of blood. His heart and his head. His head knows he's got to do what he's got to do. His heart is afraid of what's happening. He's hanging on the cross. His head knows God, his Father, is never going to really leave him. But his heart is saying, Father, why have you forsaken me? There's a disconnect. If you feel lonely, it's okay. You know in your head that God is with you. There are times in your journey, Jesus is behind you, pushing you because you're reluctant, kind of the Jonah syndrome. There are times in your journey, Jesus is next to you, accompanying you like he did Adam and Eve, because you're on the right path and he just wants to encourage you. There are times in your journey, he's walking in front of you because the path is dark. You can't see it. You don't know where you're going. Joseph is in jail. He has no idea where the path is about to take him. So he's just blindly following Jesus. God, I know you got a plan in this somehow. I can't see the path. I'm in jail. And there are times when it's just so hard that he picks you up and he carries you. I've been there. So if that is where you are in your journey, this song is for you. Don't ever forget, even though your heart doesn't always know it, that he is here. I'm going to close with my last two songs here. This next song is a song you've heard many, many times. It's a song that has been sung over and over again. Because it's a song that celebrates the part of our journeys when maybe we're going through a situation like my dad's going through. Maybe you're going through something else. It might be a marriage crisis. It might be a health challenge. You might be stressing majorly in your life about finances right now. It could be your kids. Kids, if we love them dearly, they can break our hearts and mend them all in 1 second. Maybe it's a spiritual challenge. Maybe you feel like your prayers are hitting a glass ceiling. I know God is there, but I don't feel like what I'm saying is getting to him. There are times we go through storms or challenges, things in our life we're not sure, these Joseph in jail experiences like my dad is going through. And God always says there is a blessing on the other side of this. Throughout the biblical record, there's always been a rainbow on the other side of everybody's storm. Think about it. Think about Daniel. Think about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Think about Moses. Think about the Israelites. Think about the Exodus. Think about Abraham and Joseph. Think about Jesus. Think about us. On the other side of this journey, there's going to be an amazing, amazing reward. There's always a blessing in disguise. Sometimes your blessings come through raindrops. Sometimes your healing comes through tears. When Laura Story wrote this song, her husband was fighting a brain tumor. If you read the story of what they had to go through while he was dealing with this brain tumor, it'll strengthen your faith to see how strong they were in their faith when he was facing his own mortality in his 20s. When he was paralyzed due to the surgery, when he had to learn to walk and talk again. She wrote this song as her anthem of faith. God, regardless of what happens, regardless of how long my Job season of my journey is, I will trust that there is a blessing somewhere in this. And there always is. And that's what this song celebrates. This last song, I think, is a very appropriate message. And it's simply this. Philippians chapter 1, verse 6, beautiful promise that we all know. When God starts something, regardless of what it is, he always finishes it. He who began a good work in you is not done yet. You're still on the journey. Someday this journey is going to come to an end when he says to you, well done, thou good and faithful servant. And a whole new journey that doesn't have any end begins. And I don't even know if we can call that a journey, because a journey has a beginning and an end. And if there is no beginning and end, there's no time. There's just life in perfection with Jesus. It's going to be amazing. I want to be a part of that. And God knows it. There's nothing I want more in my life than myself, my family to be saved. To someday, face to face, this thought process that I've had in my life the entire time I've lived in my 38 years of Jesus is going to become physical when I see him and I hug him and I say, I didn't deserve it, but thank you. And then I have a bunch of questions. And then I'm going to say, Jesus, when you have time, I'd like to hear you sing. Audience of one, I just want to sit and hear him sing. I look forward to that day. Until then, he's very busy, let's be honest, because he's in heaven right now. He's in heaven interceding on my behalf. He's in heaven interceding on your behalf. When God the Father says, I'm looking at the record here and I notice that Scott has done this. Jesus can say yes, and he's sorry, and I did this, Father. And that's enough for God. He looks at me, but instead of seeing me, he sees his son. He sees the hands. And he says, it's enough for me. You've justified Scott. His sins are forgiven him. I'm so thankful that Jesus is in heaven in the heavenly sanctuary interceding for me. And this song celebrates that. I'll read you the words before I sing this. Before the throne of God above. This is a Getty song. Some of you know this. The Gettys are Keith and Kristen Getty, I think are their names. They're amazing songwriters. They're writing modern day hymns that I think will be in our hymnal someday. This is one of them. Before the throne of God above, I have a strong and perfect plea, a great high priest whose name is love, whoever lives and pleads for me. My name is graven on his hands. My name is written on his heart. I know that while in heaven he stands, no tongue can bid me thence depart. When Satan tempts me to despair and tells me of my guilt within, upward I look and see him there who made an end to all my sin. Because my sinless Savior died, my sinful soul is counted free. For God the just is satisfied to look on him and pardon me. Behold him there, the risen Lamb, my perfect spotless righteousness, the great unchangeable I am, the King of glory and of grace. One with himself, I cannot die. My sinful soul is counted free. My life is hid with Christ on high, with Christ my Savior and my God. As we think about our journey, I don't know where you are in yours, but I can tell you the end is very promising. If you stay close to your Creator and you believe that he is coming for you soon.